Hello, fellow Star Trek fleet commanders. This is 𝗂𝗵𝘁𝗵 from BHD8 Gaming. The rules of engagement, RoE, or sometimes referred to as simply RoE, are the player-created codes of conduct for PvP engagements in Star Trek Fleet Command. If you were to ask about 10 players what the rules of engagement should be, you are likely to come up with about 13 different answers. Seriously. I have been asked what my take is on the rules of engagement over the course of my time as a content creator. I believe at this point that RoE only really needs to address 5 items, but you're welcome to change my mind. Let's do it. A little bit of backstory for me. When I first started playing the game, I'd go send survey ships out, go let them do their thing. I'd get blown up sometimes, other times I wouldn't. I didn't understand why. One day I got a little bit irked that somebody blew up my ship, so I went out, found one of their ships, and blew it up too. 1 for 1, I thought, was the way that this should be treated. I immediately got a PM from that player asking why I violated the rules of engagement for the server, and if I understood what the repercussions were going to be for my entire alliance if I continued to be doing what I was doing. They linked to me this website that explained to me what the rules of engagement were, and suddenly my eyes were open. I thought it was amazing. I started to understand why it was happening sometimes, not other times, and I really became a huge proponent of rules of engagement. But not long after that, I started to see issues between alliances where both claimed to be following the rules of engagement, but they seemed to be operating off of different playbooks. And I found out that many of these alliances had their own rules of engagement. They were not operating off of the exact same rule set, which kind of made things a little bit cloudy. So I did what a lot of reasonable people would do, and I went and created a Discord server for my Star Trek Fleet Command server to bring everybody that was a alliance leader to the table so we could all hammer out the way that RoE should be and apply it across the board for our server. Yeah, I did do that. Ask people from the old server 62, we're now currently merged into server 63, but many people will tell you Dan did do that. It was very interesting. For a while it worked really well, but then there started to be this too many cooks in the kitchen thing. We started to really get it extremely complicated, and people referred to it as the Book of RoE, to go consult before you engaged in PvP. That's really not where we want to be. You really need, if you're going to bother to have a rules of engagement at all, it needs to be really simple. It needs to be something that newer players can understand and resonate with. It needs to be easy to communicate, easy to enforce, and not change that often, if at all. So my current stance is that minimal RoE is the best RoE. Yes, I have dabbled with the no RoE is good RoE type of mentality, where everybody's just basically rogue. I'm a little bit unpopular in some circles because I do understand that rogue is a valid playstyle. I don't try to invalidate those players like a lot of people do. I don't try to go create some angry mob to go hunt those players, because I believe that many people should just treat this as a game and play it the way that they would like to play it. Now, if a lot of people who want to play it a different way disagree with that and decide to go within the parameters of the game and attack another player, things like that, don't be surprised if that happens. But I don't think no RoE is good RoE. I don't think that if everybody was a rogue, that would be very healthy for the Star Trek Fleet Command community. And as a person who creates content for the greater community, the health of the overall community is very important to me. So as such, the minimal RoE is really what I encourage people to try to adopt on their servers, because it is very easy to communicate, very easy to enforce, and ideally it will be around 120 characters in total to get across to people, because that is the length of a single personal message or single message of any length within the game. But I do believe that things like no loot, don't shoot are a little oversimplified. To me, the rules of engagement should be the smallest common denominator across all of the alliances. If an alliance chooses to go above and beyond according to their own personal code or whatever, then they should go ahead and do so, but they should not expect other people to do that. What do I mean when I say that? I mean that PvP-oriented players should not be trying to cram PvP down everybody's throat and try to force everything to be completely wide open in the game. But on the flip side of that, your PvE players should not have special consideration. They should not just be able to go mine way over protected capacity just because they claim to, or they genuinely do, not ever engage in player versus player combat. Real quick, before I dive straight into my list of 5 items that I believe that the rules of engagement should address, make sure to like the video if you are enjoying it. Comment down below on what you feel like your rules of engagement are, if you think they're effective, if you think that they are crippling players' ability to play the game, if you think that they have created a healthy environment. All of those things we'd love to hear in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe if you've not done so already so you can get more Star Trek Fleet Command and other gaming content. And go ahead and share this video with your friends, neighbors, colleagues, countrymen, everybody, so that we can go ahead and get this very important video out to the rest of the community. If you'd like to financially support the channel, you can do so through the link to PayPal down in the description. You can join the channel to get interesting perks, including a badge on all of your comments so they stand out, access to emojis in the comment section and on our live streams, and the ability, if you are at the legendary Jarl or higher level, to see the videos before they're posted to the greater population. Speaking of live streams, those do happen every Friday currently from 9 p.m. until about midnight Eastern. Come hang out with us in the community. It's been a blast for us to go ahead and start doing those, just to really hang out in a more face-to-face setting with the greater community. The crew that supports this channel as well will be there. It is a lot of fun, so if you've never taken part in one, please try to join us. We have a lot of fun with them, and we think you will as well. So now diving into the 5 items that Dan believes that your RoE should address, and only these 5, by the way. Here they are. You can call it Dan's 5-point RoE system, whatever you want to call it. The very first thing that you should really address if you're going to bother to create any kind of rules of engagement or not, and what most rules of engagement are built around, is your overprotected cargo ships, specifically your underprotected version of that, where a ship that is attacked that is under protected cargo, meaning that if somebody attacks it, they get nothing from that other than a little bit of power destroyed and to inconvenience another player. Many people feel like that should be protected. I am one of those, but I'm trying to go ahead and pull my own opinion out of most of this and just state that these are the 5 items that RoE should address, not really how you should address them within the RoE. Many people try to get really fuzzy here and say that it should be this percentage overprotected depending on what the resource is and all that, and that is just too clunky and unenforceable, and it gets into that book of RoE mentality where you really have to try to calculate if you're allowed to engage in PvP with somebody, and I don't think that's a very healthy way to engage this. And no, I don't believe that any warship that is mining should get any kind of consideration either, including the discovery with its ship ability. So if you're at a level that you've been using enough mycelium doing your jumps and summoning that you have to go out and mine it, that's kind of a you problem, and you shouldn't be sneaking into RoE that you should be allowed to go do that without any repercussions from people. Very likely if you're out there having to go mine mycelium so that you can convert it into the cultivated mycelium, you've been harassing some players anyway, so don't be surprised if they come harass you back when they see that you're trying to reload up on your cultivated mycelium. That tangent aside, the second item that I feel like any RoE that is going to be created should address is your 0 nodes for those surveys. If they're sitting under their protected cargo threshold and idle on a mining node, that node does not recharge, they're not getting anything out of it. How are you going to address that situation? This time, I'm not really going to give you my opinion here. I just think that if you're going to create any kind of rules of engagement at all, that you should at least consider what happens when a miner stops mining on a node and how you're going to address that. The third item for me is lucrative space, not even all token space. A lot of people feel like if it costs you a token to get out there, those tokens are scarce. They're not infinite for you to just be able to come and go like you can in other systems. Then there should be some sort of special considerations there. To me, lucrative systems are the most important of these type of systems. The rest are not that hard to come by. To get access to one of those lucrative grade 3 token spaces, you have to be in a space that already requires a token to get to, one of those transwarp areas where there are the Borg probe hostiles. Be lucky enough to catch one of the assimilated Ferengi traders, blow that thing up to get the antique latinum that comes from that antique latinum token that you will use in the Borg refinery on a 5-day cooldown for a chance to get one of those lucrative tokens. So they are really a giant pain in the butt. Even if you are sitting on a giant stockpile of those antique latinum tokens, you can only try to refine once every 5 days or so, and I know people that have gone 2 or 3 weeks without getting one of those tokens. So if you go put a ship out there and you're trying to go ahead and leverage the fact that you're able to get to this very lucrative, if you will, space, and somebody just comes out there and blows you up, of course they had to use their own token on the one side of it, but you're out anything that's not your protected cargo, so why would you even go out there to go send a ship out there if you are not able to go ahead and return that? People wouldn't really use that space, I don't think, if it wasn't protected. So I'm kind of bleeding into how I feel about that, but in general, you should at least have something in your rules of engagement that address lucrative space, if not all token space. The fourth piece for me is Armadas. You should just have some general idea if Armadas are going to have any special considerations. Yes, they are usually warships that are involved there. Those are usually open targets for anybody on any server, but are you going to think of them any differently because people will be using their hard-earned directives to go ahead and call those Armadas? Again, not really going to weigh in here. That's just something I think that you should address if you're going to bother to create rules of engagement on your server, in your alliance, what have you. And the final thing for me, 0.5 on my 5-point system, is territory space. I'm not saying this needs any kind of protection, but you should take into consideration that usually if you own a territory and somebody else sends a ship, they are trying to gain visibility in that system, or they are trying to hunt one of your overprotected cargo ships. So in many cases, that is a hostile action, just scouting out your territory. Are you going to treat that as such in your rules of engagement and act accordingly, or are you going to let that slide and treat it like anything else in the game? That's all that I'm saying, is that these are the 5 items that you really should have some sort of answer for if you're going to create rules of engagement. Things that have been intentionally left out of this list are the specialty ships. We already addressed the discovery earlier, but basically anything that gets complicated that says X ship while doing Y should get Z protections should not be brought into your rules of engagement. It gets extremely clunky. Basically, if everybody has those ships, everybody acts accordingly, then most people are going to not be jerks so that they can get the benefits of those ships. When people are jerks, then you can go declare war on people outside of people breaking your rules of engagement. If you just want to go fight people, just be like, hey, we're going to fight you, and start a war. You don't have to wait for them to break the rules of engagement. I think that is an issue with a lot of players, is they think as long as I follow the rules of engagement, nobody should be allowed to declare war on me. And the flip side of that is, well, until somebody violates the rules of engagement, I'm not allowed to declare war on them. Remember that rules of engagement are your player-created codes of conduct, and you are free to declare war and act however you want to in the game, but there are certain repercussions that will follow. So specialty ships, no. Another thing that I hear a lot is the swarm systems. I've played both with swarm space protected, swarm space not protected, and I'll tell you there are very little differences between swarm space being protected and not protected. I don't think your rules of engagement should cover that. Another thing that I've seen is raids. If you are allied with somebody being raided, then you should be allowed to come to their defense. If you are not allied with them, then you shouldn't get involved, is pretty much the way that I hear it phrased most of the time. That is a giant pain to go ahead and figure out who's allied with who, especially because that can change, and I don't think that's a great way to go ahead and put limitations on who's allowed to engage in a raid one way or another. Minimal RoE is the best RoE in my opinion here, so don't worry about who can join a raid or who can't, who's allowed to defend it, etc. My thoughts on raids are basically that they should happen under the cover of darkness anyway, so if I get caught with my hand in the cookie jar, I pretty much bounce out, unless I can go ahead and get some extra scoops with that amalgam these days. But in general, if anybody shows up to defend a raid, if I can't overwhelm them relatively quickly, then I'm out and I go move on and do other things. I want an unshielded base that nobody cares about so that I can go ahead and scoop it. That's what I'm after when I raid, and I don't think that RoE should protect me from raiding another player's base, which is one of the most PvP actions you can really do in the game, is going to take resources from another player. Deep space is another big thing that people try to get protected in your rules of engagement. I don't think that's a very good idea at all. First off, because your deep space, especially earlier on in a server's lifespan, is really only accessible to your higher operations, usually VIP level players anyways. And if you guys want to have some sort of agreement or just not attack each other, that's on you. But the moment that somebody else has the ability to enter those spaces because their warp range gets there, and they're not a member of your exclusive club, that is when the tantrums start. When somebody gets out there and can start hitting ships that have just forever been ignored for being overprotected cargo, and somebody else hits them, rules of engagement say they're allowed to do that, but people get really indignant, the tantrums start, and I don't think that's legitimate at all. Whether you are a free-to-play player or a VIP level player, you need to mind your minors no matter where they are and not expect any kind of special consideration. I will say in general, while we're talking about rules of engagement though, one of the big pieces to this that causes a lot of issues is to really watch how you conduct yourself in personal messages and Galaxy chat regarding other players. Remember that whether you're blowing up somebody else's pixels or they're blowing up your pixels, this is a game at the end of the day. It does not give you free reign to get upset about something and go rant and rave in your personal messages and on Galaxy Chat. You guys are embarrassing yourself and the rest of us when you do that. Please stop with your nasty PMs towards each other. If you don't like the fact that your pixels get blown up, and if you can't blow up other people's pixels without having to go talk trash to them, then maybe you should go find some other game if this is not a good, healthy game for you. So please just stop with those horrible messages that you guys are sending each other. On the flip side of that, if you're receiving horrible messages from people, just block that player. It will make your life so much easier. So really quickly to recap, the 5 items that Dan believes you should address to some capacity in your rules of engagement, not really how you should address them, are your OPC/UPC minors, something to do with that threshold, how you're going to act with that. 0 node for your survey ships, lucrative space, armadas, and territory. You are welcome to try to change my mind in the comments below. However, shifting gears for just a moment here, the rules of engagement aside, the alliance that you're in, the people that you spend a lot of time playing this game with, will have a huge impact on your enjoyment of the game. So make sure to check out this video showing my top 4 tips as an alliance hopper to let you know how we feel like you should be approaching alliances in general and how to find the right alliance that fits your playstyle and personality. Thank you to all the people who have supported the channel with their either monetary donations through the PayPal, Patreon, or joining the YouTube channel, or non-monetarily with their likes, comments, subscriptions, and sharing the video. Choose to live, my friends, and we will see you again soon.